Good early morning, everybody. It is almost 12:30 a.m. here on Monday, December 30th, 2013, the second to last day of the 2013 calendar year. And you're listening live to another podcast of Real Steel Sports with James Krishnarick. Well, it was an up and down year for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I just wanted to say that if I could have to describe this season with one word, I couldn't do it. But if I had to describe it with a term, I'd say roller coaster. You started off with a team that was predicted by many of the sports pundits and experts to, 6-10, 7-9, 5-11 even. Some people were even predicting 4-12 because of the state of this offensive line, the defense in flux, losing James Harrison in free agency. That's what a lot of these people thought. But, pundits were proven wrong. And I just wanted to say that I'm proud of my team. Because the Steelers could have easily folded their 10 at a certain point and gone into panic mode, but they didn't do it. I mean, you start off the season, you lose at home against Tennessee, you lose Marquise Pouncey, the quarterback for the offensive line, and Larry Foote, the quarterback for the defense as a linebacker, and right off the bat. Then you go to Cincinnati and you lose because of some, one stupid call shouldn't have counted. It could have been a closer game. Then you go home against Chicago and you blew a chance late in the game to keep it close. Your quarterback makes too many turnovers. And then you go to London to play Minnesota. You get sacked at the end of the game with no timeouts, and that's the end of that. I think that if there's any Steeler fans at that point, and right after the 55-31 drubbing to the Patriots, that would have said, "Hey, we're going to be in the playoffs and in the season," you'd have been laughed out of the room. I mean, this team, from the start of the year to the end of the year, was not very consistent, but they found a good formula the last half of the year, and they really, really did play well. The only two games they didn't play well, of course, are the two that they lost, the ones at Baltimore and the ones in Miami. The ones versus Miami, both of them were winnable games. The way that I see that this team played is that, they started off slow, and once they got Le'Veon Bell and they got the running game going a little bit, and then it started to really, what's the term I'm looking for? It really started to, come to a head and start to play better. This team started to play better. And then, it just a couple losses, and then the rest of the season, they were a pretty damn good team. If you took this team, if you started the NFL season at week 10, then the Steelers and the Bengals would have won the AFC North. They did not lose. They only lost one game in the division, following the loss to the Patriots, and that was at Baltimore. Beat Cleveland twice, drubbed Cincy the one game. This Steeler team, the second half of the year, was as good as the team at the first half of the year was bad, honestly. They found their offensive rhythm their last 5 games. I mean, you look what they did. You look what they did starting with the Detroit game. They had 5 of their last 7 games. They scored at least 28 points. At least 27, my mistake. And they seemed to find a rhythm on offense. Ben played well. Antonio Brown was 5 catches and at least 50 yards in every game, which no receiver's ever done in the history of this league, which is an incredible accomplishment if you ask me. And I think he should be first team all NFL. That's just my opinion. But, anyways, this whole team, I think, started to play a little bit better as the season went on, and, they found their rhythm the second half of the year. But the one thing about this team that kept it from a playoff spot was some of the situations they were put in. Some of the games that they should have won. And you look at the Tennessee game. I mean, a bunch of dumb plays. The fumble on the first drive. That they should have won that game, I think. I think they definitely should have won the game against Oakland. Swisham should have made those 2 kicks. And you look at the Baltimore-Miami game, those are both winnable. To be honest, this team should have finished 12-4 and should have won the AFC North by a couple of games. They shouldn't have finished 8-8 and out of the playoffs. But, that's been the mark of the Steelers the last years. The last 2 years. I mean, if you look at the 2012 Steelers, and in comparison, it was pretty much the same damn thing. Only this team started fast and really tailed off. I mean, they lost in Oakland because of penalties and turnovers, which they had no business losing to that team. Lost in Tennessee because of turnovers and penalties. You know, the Baltimore game, they should have that kick return by Jacoby Jones for the touchdown. They should have snuffed that out and stopped that, and that'd have been a 10-6 win. The game at Cleveland, we don't fumble the ball 8 times, and we win that game. So that's 4 more wins right there. And you look at the games against Dallas and against Cincy. That should have been possibly a 12 to 14 win team right there. But it wasn't. But looking at this team, I'm really, really proud of how this team banded together at the end of the season. They could have easily, after they started 2-6, said, hey, it's not in for us. We're not going to go to the playoffs, yada, yada, yada. But they didn't do it. They stayed strong and they didn't give up. And I think that's a testament to this team. I think it's a testament to the veteran leaders like Ben. Like Antonio Brown's a veteran leader now. He's been there since his first year was the last year the Steelers were in the Super Bowl. So he's been there for a few years. Other veterans like Heath Miller, Troy Polamalu, and Brett Keys on the defensive side, and Ryan Clark, they banded together, and they were a stupid penalty away from being in the playoffs. The penalty is that the new NFL rule this year stated that you could not have more than 6 players to either side of the snapper during a field goal or a punt. And the Chargers had 7. If that penalty would have been called, then it would have been a 36-yard field goal attempt by Ryan Suckup, which I know he probably wouldn't have missed, and the Steelers would have gone to the playoffs, and the Chargers would be sitting at home in January. But, what happened. But my point is that this team, if we just go through position by position, Ben Roethlisberger's got a few years left. This year, he did not get hit a whole lot. Like, if you look at how many times he got sacked this year, it wasn't as, an excessive amount like it was in the past. He was sacked a few times early on, but for the most part, his sack percentage is a lot lower. His sack percentage this year was the second lowest in his career next to last year. He was sacked only 6.9% of the time. But if you look at the 3 years they went to the Super Bowl, 2010, 2008, and 2005, his sack percentage was 8.9, 7.9, 7.6, not respectively, but those were his totals. So the offensive line did a great job keeping upright, and I think a lot of the credit definitely needs to go to the offensive lineman who stepped in. I mean, Fernando Velasco was really, really impressive. David DeCastro matured excessively from year 1 to year 2. Marcus Gilbert had a good year. The offensive line itself, some of the other guys, Ramon Foster was okay, but for the most part, I think they'll probably be able to do better. I think they'll probably go for a guard in the draft to try to stabilize that part of the line. I mean, they're going to Kelvin Beachum. It was pretty damn good. He played pretty well at his position. Heath Miller's going to be around for a lot longer. Sanders and Brown, I think they'll try to re-sign Sanders and make sure they keep him here. I think Jericho Cotchery stays for another year. At least I hope so, because he had a really good season this year. Le'Veon Bell, the future is so bright for this kid. He's going to need sunglasses. His rookie season may only have had 770 yards and less than 4 yards a carry, being an abysmal, 3.4. But his yards per scrimmage is almost 100 per game. 1163 and 1,163 yards from scrimmage in 12 games? Pretty impressive. What I would like to see on the defensive side is this guy was one of my favorite players on the Steelers for a long time, and I have his jersey. But I do think unless they can restructure Woodley or they can, make a new contract where he doesn't make as much money as he does a year, I don't think he should be back. Because if you look at what he's done the last few seasons, he's really been injured because he hasn't been healthy. This year's a little healthier, but it didn't matter. You look at 2011, he had a really good year, 9 sacks in 10 games. 2012 and 2013, in 24 starts, he registered 9 sacks. That's less than a sack every 3. That's almost a sack every 3 games, and that's not the kind of numbers we can be having from Lamar Woodley. He wasn't even really getting consistent pressure on the quarterback. Other guys that I liked this year going forward I like Cameron Hayward a lot. What is it, third-year player? He'll be fourth year next year of Ohio State, played well. Brett Kiesel, great contributions in his career to the black and gold, but I think he's done. I don't think he's going to come back. I think he's had his fix. I think he, has had fun, but I find it hard to believe he'd play for any other team, and I find it really, really hard to believe that he's going to be back. So I think he's done. McLennan will be back next year. He had a good year. He's not as big a plug as Casey Hampton, but he's strong and he's pretty good in pass deep and pretty good in pass rushing. He's able to get good heavy pressure. Ziggy Hood was a better player than he was this past year, and I think that'll be the line for the next few years. Hood, McLennan, and Hayward, because their average age isn't even 26, so they got years ahead of them. But I said I think either Woodley should be cut or restructured. Foot, I'm not sure if he'll be back because I think Williams I can't remember if his name is Vince Williams or Nick Williams. Hang on. Yeah, Vince Williams for the Steelers had a very, very good year filling in for Woodley for Foot when he went down in week 1. Timmons, wow, what a beast of an inside linebacker he is. Just an absolute travesty he was not named the Pro Bowl. Jarvis Jones was kind of slow in his development, but hey, when you're adjusting to Dick LeBeau's system, even if you played a similar system in college, adjusting to LeBeau is no easy task. What I think will happen next year is I don't think Woodley's going to be back. I think that Jason Worlds and Jarvis Jones is going to be the outside linebacker combination for the next few years. I think that's what it's going to be with Timmons in the inside along with Vince Williams, because I think Vince Williams has proven he's a good player, very rarely out of position, was a quick study, and I think he's a guy that can carry the mantle on the inside for this team. The secondary, they're old. The average age of the secondary this year between, Ike Taylor, Troy Polamalu, William Gay, and Ryan Clark, was 31 years, 9 months. That was the average age. So, what that's telling me is they need to get younger at that position. I think Troy will get restructured and be back. I don't think he's done playing football. Will be his 12th year coming up. I think he'll come back for one more year, or they'll re-sign him to a really small contract because you can't pay that guy with that much tread on, that much mileage on him, that many dollars. You can't do that because you take away from other players in the team who need the money, who are young and deserve new contracts, like Emmanuel Sanders. But I don't think Ryan Clark will be back because I think, the development in the secondary, it was not really that great this year because they did give up some big plays, but I think Shamarko Thomas can be a really good player for years to come. Didn't have a great rookie year, but I think the fact that he struggled on sometimes, I think he'll help him. But all in all, from this team, I think going forward, they're a lot better off than they were a year ago. For 2014, the base salary, here's where it's really concentrated, it's top heavy. The base salary, not counting free agents, is $88 million. The cap number, which adds prorated bonus, makes it $131.3 million. That was 131.3. But $123 million is the salary cap, so they got to shave $10 million off and sign their draft picks. I think Ben will restructure. He always does, and I think he'll be more than happy to do it again. Woodley, again, he's eating up $13 million next year. He doesn't nearly deserve it. Ike Taylor, his last year in his contract. Lawrence Timmons, I think he's more than earned it. Polamalu, I think they'll try to restructure. Going forward, I see a team that actually has a brighter future than the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns, obviously. But I think right now Cincinnati's the best team in the AFC North, which sucks to say because I hate Cincinnati with a fiery passion that burns hotter than Satan in the butthole, but that's just a biased opinion. I really just don't like the Bengals because they're a division rival. And honestly, I dislike the Ravens 10 times more. But to say it like this is very, very obvious. Is that if you look at next year, our projected starters, based on my anticipation, will be the defensive line will going from one side to the others. Cam Hayward, Steve McClendon, and Ziggy Hood. Then at linebacker core, you have Jason Worlds, Vince Williams, Lawrence Timmons, Jarvis Jones. And at defense, you've got Cortez Allen, Ike Taylor, Troy Polamalu, and Shamarko Thomas. That's not bad because Ike Taylor didn't have a bad year. He didn't have a great year either. I mean, the guy has hands of stone, but again, he still can cover some elite receivers. But anyways, next year the Steelers' schedule is, in my opinion, easier than this year. Their schedule is as followed. At home and away, they of course got Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. But at home they have Houston, Indianapolis, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and Kansas City. Away they've got Jacksonville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Carolina, and the Jets. I look at Kansas City at home, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Carolina as losses on the road. If you do it like that, they can go 12-4, but that's really, really, really far-fetched to say they'll go 12-4, considering the way how this team tends to make their mistakes. My phone just went off. But all I'm saying is going forward, I think this team's got a brighter future than people give credit for. And in terms of contending for AFC title berths and Super Bowls, yeah, they're not close to that. Right now, the top dogs in the AFC are just light years and light years ahead of the Steelers. But I think this team in the future will be contending for the AFC North title for years to come. I think they got a brighter future in Baltimore. Baltimore lost a lot of leadership and tied a lot of money up in Joe Flacco, who had a very, very average and very, very poor year. Was not at all worthy of the $120 million contract he signed in the offseason. But regardless of that, the Ravens are stuck with their problem, and the Browns are the Browns. But right now it's the Steelers and the Bengals for the next few years in the AFC North. So people get used to it. But in terms of the Steelers, they finished the year 8-8. They scored 379 points. They allowed 370 for a +9 differential. They are a team that I think, 2 or 3 points here and there, and a couple field goals by Sean Sweishman, we were in control of our own destiny. We'd have made it in the playoffs. But, pinning it all a couple guys is kind of harsh because everybody kind of had a hand in getting them to 8-8, but also being the reason why they finished 8-8. They could have been better, they could have been worse, but they had some fun games this year. Like some of the games, like against Detroit, were fun. The one at home against the Bengals was fun. The one at home against the Ravens was fun to watch. Some of these games were a lot of fun to watch. Going to Green Bay and beating them and getting payback for that Super Bowl defeat. It'll never be payback, but still. Those fun. There were some fun ones being a Steeler fan this year, and there were some very, very sad ones, but 8-8 for a team that was projected by many to be 5-11 or 6-10. It's positive. I still think they could use a change at offensive coordinator because I think Todd Haley, still I don't think his offense is right for Ben or those receivers. But I trust the Steelers will do the right thing, and I think they'll be contending for the AFC North in the next few years. I think right now they're the second best team in their division, personnel-wise and coaching-wise. And I think that going forward, they're in okay shape. They got a good pick, number 15, in the draft this year. They wanted to trade up. They can always do that, but hey, I got to give they're not as bad as people are going to predict them to be.